Can
Yeah.
I quickly jump in with a possible example, a tangible example for a songline in Germany, actually? Because like when I read Sandtalk, or listened to the audiobook, like the songline notion is kind of mysterious. So it was kind of just as you just shared, Tim, like when Tyson shared this crocodile story with you, like you kind of just get more of the vibe, but not really a clear definition. That's the same in the book. Um, but I'm very much tuned into the similar kind of frequency that you described him with, like something like a mind palace encoded in physical, in land, in Mother Earth. I don't know. Um, but me and my former partner actually realized at some point that in Germany there's a thing called the Nibelungen I don't know if you know that, where this guy ba slays a dragon and then he takes a bath in the blood of the dragon that makes him invincible, but the leaf lands on one spot and someone sees that, so there the blood doesn't make him invisible. And later, this is like the point where he's stabbed. I don't know if that's internationally a famous thing, but in Germany, everyone kind of knows this story. And it just so happens that where my former partner grew up, like in her, literally next to her hometown, is literally a route that you can walk where
Mhm.
like where that story played out, apparently.
Mhm.
So, and our culture being so kind of removed from that fluid, symbiotic sense and meaning making with the land, we kind of turned it into that objective story that we now teach in books and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But still, the link to the land is still there. And I imagine that way back, like the story, I don't know how old it is, probably like really old, way back before literacy was widespread and stuff, people would probably do a much more indigenous thing. But the story is connected to a place. Not only a place, but a series of places, like a little path through the land. Um, and maybe I can just throw in one or two more notions here that kind of fit to that, which is so in general to me that I had a conversation with Jordan a while ago where he brought up this notion of a movement from substance ontology to a relational ontology,
Mhm.
which kind of is like in parallel goes hand in hand with a movement from a truth first epistemology to one of a beauty first epistemology, where it's kind of like the relationship is more fundamental. And in the immanent metaphysics, if I get that right, beauty is the immanent, is like the relationship between truth and goodness. Um, I haven't really checked that, but that's kind of how it feels to me. But um, yeah, and Tim, you were saying before that like, or Valeria, you were saying that like if we don't have a word for something, we can't really even have a cognition. Like we can't really perceive it and deal with it. And I'm reminded that in Sand Talk, Tyson talks about how they have a word in their language that we don't really have a counterpart for. Um, but it would be translated to something like us two, where you refer to like the second person relationship, but they give it a name. It probably like it felt as relevant as the notion of I or you. Like the us two is like as important, maybe even more important. I don't know. But there's this general thing that happens kind of when you shift back into that indigenous mode, where the primary lens is a relational one and not not one of identity
Mhm.
and individual. And it feels to me that there is a number of ways that this plays out. There's kind of your whole way of navigating the world shifts from having this kind of separation boundary where you kind of differentiate like this is not me and this is me. And you kind of
Mhm.
like just extract all the data and then you compute it in your intellect and then you navigate like a robot. That's kind of like one extreme. And then the more indigenous thing is that the sense making doesn't happen in here isolated from out there, but it rather happens at the boundary. So that means like in conversations are very different when the conversation itself kind of is the thing that thinks instead of the individual
Mhm.
brains or whatever you want to call it participating in it. But it's also with these song lines, I get the sense it's kind of like Tyson talks about this, that we're basically like domesticated human beings are operating at just a fraction of our potential because we kind of do not at all use this symbiotic process with the land, like the genius that's only unlocked that happens in between the the people and the land. And I feel like a songline is very much that, where you're the mind palace is encoded in reality, but it's like in the land, but it's really like the land is an extension of your mind in that sense. Um, and yeah, and there's just also this way of how do you relate to story? Because I also feel like this symbiotic relationship to a story itself, where like the story itself is a being. And just as I have a conversation with you guys right now, I can also almost have a conversation with story. And it just feels like this more shamanic indigenous realm was all much more movement. It's much more at the kind of across cross boundary relational process. And songlines seem to fit that pattern.